Quería dar la bienvenida a Ido Green from Google. So I'm going to speak some bad English. So give the welcome to Ido. He's an advocate from Google for the Chrome OS. So, well, here he is.
Thank you. So thank you very much. First, thank you very much for coming and for CityLab for hosting us and the great guys, Fernando and others that just did this amazing day. I'll try in the keynote just to focus and give you hints for things that you could probably go deeper and in much larger depth after it, because we're quite constrained in terms of the times. But there are a few really exciting things that I would love to share with you. At least I'm finding them very exciting, and I think other developers should as well. Just to make it very clear, here you could just follow on the slides. It's all up in the air. The slideshow, it's basically an HTML5 app, so it doesn't matter which device you have, as long as you have a browser there. You could probably just follow on the slides while we are talking, and afterwards, of course. So this is the short link. We covered that. Another just short hint is that after you'll go there, you'll see here a link to an in-depth article that I wrote after my talk in Google I/O. This article is basically speaking about a new product that we have in Google for App Engine, and it's called Google Cloud Endpoints. We realize that today more and more developer startups want to have a cool new API that they could exploit from mobile devices, web apps, and any other way or protocol or technology. And Google Cloud Endpoint is basically giving you the opportunity to have a great API that you could maintain, develop, and enhance with all the benefits of Google App Engine. Just a show of hands, how many here are considered themselves to be server-side developers? Cool. And how many are working on the client side, web developers? Perfect. And all the rest are doing Android developers, or? So we have, excellent. Great. So I guess for all of you, Google Cloud Endpoints could be a really interesting product. It's still under trusted tester, so it's in alpha mode. And I'll try to dive a bit deeper into it in my talk after this keynote. So if you want to hear a bit more about it, just feel free. Let's start. So yeah, I'm developer advocate for Google. I'm really passionate about Chrome, Chrome OS, HTML5, and new things that we could do today on the web. If you want to have a question, feedback, comments, feel free. For myself, these days, the best two channels are Google+, or Twitter, or my blog that I try to keep as updated as possible with all the new things that are happening around the web. So I thought just to start and go real quick about what things we could actually do today on the web. And usually when I'm speaking with developers, and as developer advocate, we're talking with developers from two guys with idea up to Fortune 100 companies. I'm always amazed that some of them are still stuck in 2, 3, 5 years ago, where lots of APIs and capabilities that we have today weren't available. So just let's go quickly and see some of the great things. Basically, yeah, let's go and see. We'll try to define real quickly what are modern web apps, what we could accomplish with them. I'll try to go quickly about the new APIs and tools that you could leverage today in your daily work. And DevTools and Chrome OS, I'll do in the other talk that I'll give because we won't have time for it. So when we're coming to define, it's basically taking or harnessing the power of the cloud with a combination of what users are expecting today from any app there. Users don't care if it's a web app, it's a native app. They want the best experience that they could get. They want everything to work fast, responsive, smoothness. And today, with the power of HTML5 and native experience, we're basically defining a modern web app. Here are some examples. I specifically choose bold examples from different aspects of the spectrum just to give you insight. So let's start from the bottom right. We can't start without Angry Birds, of course. If you'll go to chrome.angrybirds.com, you'll basically be able to play the game. It will install it. So basically, it will download all the assets to your Chrome. And then if you are taking a flight, a train, any submarine, whatever place that you don't have any connection, you still be able to play the game, to enjoy it. Same with Gmail offline, New York Times, or Hipmock, that is a travel search engine. So one thing that we find that is basically contained in all of them is that they are trying to give the users the best experience to achieve their goal with the ease of use. Most of them will be very focused on the goal that they want the user to achieve, and they contain. So it's not a website that you could imagine when you are basically surfing from one page to another. You're staying with the same real estate that the one page gave you at the beginning, and you focus and you are productive with that real estate. They're coming with a methodology of offline first. When we're speaking about offline first, it's exactly what I said before. You're thinking about how the app will work when we don't have any connection, and then going from the bottom up and making sure that the sync layer will do the right things when we do have connection. It's great for lots of reasons, and we'll touch a bit why it's important. When we're shifting more and more logic to the client side, we need to deal with more and more code, hopefully not spaghetti code that we see in lots of cases. And that's one of the main reasons I think that we see a flourishing movement in all the MVC, or should I say MV star frameworks that you have out there, that in the end of the day, all of them are coming with one goal: to have a clear separation between the data and the views, and to make your code much more maintainable, readable, and hopefully better, so you could have a sane life. Device aware. We have web browsers, or specifically let's speak about Chrome, on TVs, desktop, laptops, tablets, and then mobile devices. So basically you could think of it as a pure big ecosystem, which huge one dominator. Users everywhere with all the devices will have a web browser. And you want to be able to do the best with each real estate and make sure that your website, mobile web app, or any other things that you build is doing the right things for them with the exact real estate that they are getting on that specific screen size. Last but not least is 60 frames per second, or smoothness. We definitely want to achieve performance. We want to give the users the experience that they are got used to. And all the big companies publish an ongoing research on how each millisecond that you can save in the user reaction will basically improve all the metrics of retention and happiness on the user side. I decided just to give a hint for one of the most popular frameworks out there right now, or not popular by usage, because that would be, of course, Backbone, but just interesting things that are be done with those frameworks. Let's start from the bottom, actually. Ember is a very nice framework that Yuda Katz and Tom Dell are working on. It's involved from Sprout Code, and actually today the code got nothing to do with Sprout Code. But if you're going to build the next Gmail or the next heavy app that user will spend the vast majority of their days in that web app, probably it's not a bad idea to look at what they are offering. It's a full-blown MV Star framework that giving lots of capabilities and doing lots of magic for you. Some call it Ruby on Rails for the client side because they took decisions for you, and it's with the notion of convention over configuration. And if it's working for your needs, it's probably a great framework. Backbone is one of the most popular because it's very thin. You could actually deploy today and use it in your current apps as well, as long as you have some separation between the data and the views. And Angular is one of my favorites these days. It started with few Googlers, and now it's fully open sourced. Very, very interesting things are be done with that in terms of dependency injection, test-driven development, and lots of other goodies that they just took. I think it's one of the rare framework out there that bringing to the JavaScript world all these good benefits. And here is another link for the Google Cloud Endpoint and how it's basically working with those frameworks. I wrote an app that is on GitHub, and of course you could go and fork it and change it, that just show you how to work with Google App Endpoints and HTML5 framework. Why we need offline? There's lots of good reasons. To me, I think the most compelling one is better performance. You just being able to give the user much more smoothness, and everything is working faster because you don't need to wait for this AJAX call or to need to some data to refresh and to get the acknowledge from the server that you saved the state. You could do it immediately on the client side, And especially in cases where you have flaky connections in a cafe or just on the road, you are able still to make the user as productive as possible and then do the right things in the sync layer and get back the information to the server. All the other things there are, of course, valid points as well. How we could achieve it today? So luckily, we have lots of different APIs that allow us to achieve it. First and foremost, for saving our skeleton in terms of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, some assets, some MP3 files, we have app cache for that. If we want to save state and data, we have local storage that, fortunately for us, it's across all the modern browsers today, and then a full-blown NoSQL database on the client side in terms of IndexedDB, WebSQL, of course, and File API. You could actually save files there today. I think the best way to look at it is basically on the sync layer, because that's actually the challenge. Because to save things offline, as you saw here, and we could go deeper on each and every API, it's quite easy. The APIs are very easy to understand and leverage. It's more of what you're doing in the sync layer and how you're making work great. When you want to activate the sync layer, it's this one line that lets you know when you are online or offline. So it's very easy to know what is the state of your app and what you should do. Let's dive into some cool new APIs that actually giving you lots of powers. So first and foremost, in 2012, we could see a flourishing in terms of CSS for web apps. We had huge amount of different specs, and I think that today when we're looking at web apps and the different screen sizes and all the vast amount of different ways that people will interact with them, we definitely want to make sure that we'll use something that will do the right things in terms of the holy grail of what we call the skeleton of our app. And for that, we have Flexbox, the new standard, not the old one. You could see here that 2012 is actually a year that lots of different specs are being worked on. And my two favorites that I encourage you to check out is, let's do it even bigger. It's the Flexbox API, of course, and the grid layouts. So why it's so great? Because it's basically giving us a very nice, easy way to have what we want to achieve. A main place for our main content and all the rest in terms of header, sidebar, navbar, etc. My colleague, Iji Kimura, did a very nice testing ground that you could play with, and this is the link. And just to show you the power, actually, if you'll go to the slide, you could play with them. So first, because it's a new API, we need to follow the prefix of the different browsers out there. But after you do that, you could do things like even space or attach it to the baseline or stretch it. And for the ones that work with CSS knows how hard it is to achieve it without it. The beauty here is that actually we'll do the right things, doesn't matter what the screen size that it's working, so it will do the best efforts. So for instance, if we have here, we want to just change the order or to have a column because the screen just shrink, because of the device orientation, it's trivial to do so. Other good things is simple, but still crucial, just to be able to have the same column, the height on the same columns. Just go and do view source and you'll see that when we're hovering on the click, what we're doing is just setting the height attribute, that's all. And with Flexbox, it's pretty easy. Another very nice thing here, let's make it even bigger, is that if I want for some reason to make sure that the main part is double the size of the side parts or 3 times, again, it's trivial. This is actually, let's show it to you. This is a demo that you could go and leverage. And you could see how the things, when I'm clicking, everything is being calculated for us with the best efforts. When I'm hovering on stuff, it's basically giving us lots of power in terms of just out of the box telling the browser basically what we want to achieve here. And then the browser is doing the legwork for us. There's no JavaScript here. It's pure CSS, of course. The good news is that it's supported on Safari, Chrome, and IE10. Yes. For the ones between IE6 and 9, we'll have a very good news in the end. Dynamic CSS. Dynamic CSS are pretty cool as well. Basically, it lets you do things like that. And the magic is done here. In the calc, I'll be able to say, hey, give 100% of this width, just minus whatever I want. It could be a variable. If you're using SAS or less, it's pretty similar, but it's already implemented in the browser. And when I'm hovering, I just want the border radius to be 0, so it's just changing. The great news here is that you can see the adoption is quite nice on the calc version. Data binding. So data binding is a pretty cool thing. We always wanted to be able to save some data. In the old days, we did it with jQuery, with data attribute, and we could save states and data in the DOM itself. These days, Angular allows us to do one-way data binding and two-way data bindings. Here, for instance, the one-way, as you can see, is being done in a way that I'm just extending basically the tags in the markup language. And if HTML used to be a great markup language for static sites, static web pages, with Angular, we basically want to give it the abilities when we're going and building dynamic pages or web apps. And here you could see how readable it is, even if you never saw. I'm adding this tag of making sure that this will act as an Angular app. And I'm saying this will be my model, the value, and then just take it here with the curly braces and just following the change events. And as you can see, it's working quite nicely. You don't need to use Angular or any other framework for that matter. You could basically take the data attribute and use the utter, and you'll have basically the same thing. As you can see here, we have the same thing, and in the style, we're just basically taking the content and making sure that we're following. So it's two different ways. Not always you need some powerful library. The great things is that if you use data list on all the browsers today, you have one-way data binding as well. So if I'll do something like that, it's basically a poor man's autocomplete. And that's something that you could do and leverage today, and it worked quite nicely because we basically telling the browser what we want it to achieve without any JavaScript or anything. As I said, it's supported on all the browsers today, so it's pretty good news. Multi-thread programming. That's actually one of the things that I'm truly passionate about. I got so excited that I decided to write a book about it. It's called Web Workers, very, very original. And basically, as you all know, we used to have in the browser one thread, right? And every action or heavy action that you needed to do was needed to be in hack ways offload from that main loop because the user will feel it. So everything will become sluggish, and that's definitely not something we want to do. And web workers today are giving us these powers. So basically, just think about it as multi-thread programming that you could do today in the browser. How easy it is? It's very, very easy in the sense that the API, it's quite straightforward. What we're doing here, and you can see here, we're defining a worker in our main, let's say, one-page HTML web app. And we're calling the worker. We'll give the code of the worker in worker.js, the JavaScript code that we want to run in a separate thread. And we listen to the event with post message just to be able to communicate with the worker. Now, I know some of you are smiling because they're saying, OK, but the main pain point is that we have, let's say, 50 megs of data to pass to the worker. That's a copy action, and that will be quite heavy. And we'll touch about it because we have good news there as well. In the worker itself, we could do lots of things. It's a limited API. It's not as wide open as we have in the thread itself of the browser, but still do things like import scripts and having callbacks and call external URLs, definitely doable. And everything else is being done through post message to pass the results back to the main thread. One of the things that I think held back web workers was that it was extremely hard to debug them. Today, with Chrome DevTools and Firebug as well, in lots of ways, we are able to debug them pretty easily. So as you can see here, we're just clicking this little button of debug, and you basically get Chrome DevTools in a separate window, allowing you to debug, put breakpoints, and do all the things that you know and love to do on the main page on the web worker itself. Another great thing is that to do feature detection today when we're using Modernizer, Modernizer, everyone know what it is? Or maybe I'll give it 5 seconds. It's an open source library that Paul Irish and other guys are working on, and basically letting you do feature detection or what are the feature and capabilities that your users got, and I strongly encourage you to use it. It's on GitHub, of course it's free. In this case, with one line, we're just asking if we have web workers in that specific browsers, and we could do all the great things with them. Shared workers is another great aspect that basically letting you have one point or one source of truth for all the instances of your web app. So think on a web app where the user is opening multiple tabs, multiple windows. You still have one focal point to do all the communication with the server or to do all the communication with some local database. So pretty powerful. All the examples of the book, by the way, are on GitHub, so just feel free to look at them, leverage them, and use them. Access to file system. Who knew, but today we have a full-blown file system under the browser that we could tap, leverage, and use. The good news there is that, like in any other ecosystem, you do want to work with files in the end of the day. Save binary data, save data that is perfect to be saved with files, like long audio file or long video file or any other things. In your case, it might be just be able to do assets management and save lots of images or any other media files. This is the code to request the file system. It used to be with a limitation of 5 megs. It's not anymore. It's 50% from the free space that you have on your disk. And each app will get up to 20% from this 50%. And this is for the temporary storage. For the permanent or the other storage, you just need to declare how much you want. It started with 0. And then the user need to, of course, approve it. Once they approve it, you have it almost for good until, of course, you run out of disk space. It's, of course, sandbox per region. So in terms of security, the app is restricted to the protocol, the domain, up to the port. So, and it can't be, shared between two different ones. And basically, you're getting what you could expect in any other server-side world, a full-blown file system that you could leverage. Yeah, and we spoke about it. I'll just go quickly about the code. It's quite nested, and like any other code in JavaScript, we'll have callbacks on callbacks. In this little example, we're showing how to cache an image. And you can see that I'm doing an XHR2 in this case, fetching the image, and then I'm having in the callback, once I got the payload from the server, I'm creating a writer, I'm creating the write function in the writer using a blob because it's binary data, and in the end of the day, I'll be able to save it locally on the disk. Thank you. And like any other thing on the web, we'll get a resource, we'll get a URL, a local URL, to be able to access it and work with it. And it's pretty easy and nice to work with. The great things is that, yeah, we do have lots of callbacks here. And what Eric Bidelman did is Filer.js. Is another great colleague of mine. It's on GitHub, as you can see. And basically, this library just giving you a simple set of commands that you know how to use from Linux, and just be able, from your JavaScript, to touch and work with the files without all the callbacks that we saw so far. So you're able to do some things like CP or MV or LS and just work with them. This is a really nice playground. I won't run the demo, just feel free to use it on your own. Basically, one thing that I forgot to mention, and it's pretty important, all the things that you see here are on the cutting edge. Please try to install Chrome Canary. It will do lots of